The rise in the dark academia aesthetic and book genre on social media in recent years has been sudden and all-consuming. If you've seen it, you know. A world of idealized academia with an autumnal vibe. Poetry, literature, Latin, Greek, tweed blazers, and hidden secrets. Books that fit this vibe in an academic setting, of course, with a dark twist. The aesthetic alone is incredibly appealing and of course easy to look at, but what's with the trend? And why did it blow up? Because I don't know about you, but I hated school and my university was nothing like the universities in these dark academia books, but there is something that draws me into dark academia like no other. So let's get one thing straight. What exactly is dark academia anyway? When it comes to books, dark academia right now isn't actually a genre of book, it's more like a subgenre or general vibe. Because of this, some readers would consider some books dark academia and others not. Because dark academia isn't actually a genre on its own, it doesn't have a kind of set in stone definition of what it might mean. So I've done way too much research and read way too many articles to put together what I think is a pretty good definition of what dark academia is. Dark academia is a literary aesthetic that focuses on either an academic setting or the pursuit of knowledge in some form. The genre is most known for its themes of academia, writing and poetry, the arts, philosophy, and the use of Latin, Greek, and other languages throughout. The dark in dark academia comes from either the plot, themes of murder, danger, dark magic, secrets, cults, etc., or the characters themselves, moral values, lifestyle choices, and psychological turmoil. Dark academia as a subgenre isn't limited to a specific genre. It can appear in horror books, fantasy, historical fiction, and more. So despite all the moral or immoral implications of dark academia as a genre, it still makes for a really interesting read. But why? So why is dark academia so appealing to readers? Well, I thought there was probably no better way to find out than to ask a bunch of bookish people on YouTube and Instagram what you guys thought. So it seems like the things you guys like the most is the aesthetic, which isn't surprising given the reason that's why it gained popularity in the first place. But let's go into a little more detail. For me, there's something that is kind of alluring about something that you may never have or likely will never experience ever. Most dark academia is set in educational institutions that you will likely never have any access to whatsoever. More on that later. So experiencing them through books, or for some through an aesthetic in real life, is quite appealing. Not only this, but the dark academia setting that's so appealing in most books isn't even reality anymore anyway. There's a reason why books like The Secret History and Babel are set in the past. The Gothic architecture, old uniforms, dusty libraries, poor living conditions and institutional practices aren't quite the same as they once were. For good reason. So living these in an almost fictional past is weirdly appealing. Plus, growing up reading about a magical educational world, one with quills, uniforms, secrets, clubs, and of course, magic, makes an opportunity to delve back into this sort of world pretty exciting. Plus, there's this weird perverse need as an adult to see somebody who is incredibly intelligent and has the whole world in front of them, and then to see what they do with all of that power, especially if their moral compass is a little bit off. Is that weird? I think it's weird. So with all this in mind, it's no wonder that people find dark academia so appealing, but it doesn't really explain why it blew up. The dark academia book genre has been around for more than 20 years. In fact, some people credit its beginnings or its origin story to Donna Tartt's novel The Secret History. Published in 1992, The Secret History tells the story of a murder that takes place within a group of classics students at an elite New England college. It was so loved by fans, they made a book club for it on Tumblr in 2015, which evolved into users sharing their love for similar books and the aesthetic in general. From there it took off, but still in a kind of subdued way. And then the pandemic happened. In 2020, as the world went into lockdown, schools closed, and a huge wave of students missed out on a few years' worth of in-school academic life. Longing for this experience, they created their own and adopted the dark academia aesthetic online. It provided a dreamy fantasy for students whose future plans for higher education were suddenly uncertain. What started as an aesthetic then naturally, given the academia vibes, leaned into the world of dark academia books. In steps a book that was not only extremely well timed, but absolutely deserves the praise it gets, Babel. Babel reached my radar because of one thing and one thing only, book talk. And I'm not even on the platform. Back in May, Leah from the TikTok account Lover of Pages posted an early unboxing video for Babel captioned, "Welcome to the Dark Academia Book of the Year." It amassed 600,000 views and hundreds of comments. The build-up of the dark academia book genre and influencers on TikTok and Instagram means that not only is the dark academia genre getting a boost in views, I think it's probably here to stay. It's not just this one influencer leading the charge. There are literally hundreds, if not thousands, of book lovers on the platform who read and share their love for these books with each other, myself included. That's some powerful and mostly, I must say, free advertising for books, so it's no wonder that the dark academia genre has taken off. But there's something important that I've not talked about yet, because although dark academia is appealing and entertaining, it does have a dark side, and I'm not talking about the plot. Dark academia in general, and quite obviously, romanticizes academia, which on the surface isn't a problem, but let's go a little deeper. Because its origin is in the European wealthy elite, dark academia rightly receives criticism for being elitist and Eurocentric. It has a tendency to romanticize historically white Western aesthetics and literary ideas. Everything from clothing to settings, materials, moral concept, literary work, and more. This applies to both the dark academia aesthetic online and in books. It also romanticizes a European upper-class education. Most dark academia books focus on higher learning and Ivy League schools, creates a sense of elitism which excludes others. If you search for dark academia, it's rare to see any people of color on mood boards or as the subject of the ideal academic experience. And lastly, dark academia in general can promote unhealthy lifestyles, including excessive studying, promoting this over basic needs, alcohol, and drug abuse, and more. But while these things have been prominent up until now, they are changing. Babel is a great example of this. Part of Kwang's inspiration came from her own time studying at Cambridge and Oxford. Being there, thinking strictly about the history of what made a place like this possible. But one of the best things about Oxford is the architecture, the libraries, the sheer beauty of spaces you're allowed to be in. Babel is a nostalgic and loving rendition of a campus I knew. In contrast to this, she wanted to highlight the reason why Oxford and the British Empire exists in the first place. Babel gives a voice to the colonized and educates while it entertains. I think what made my experience there a bit different is, first of all, I'm a Chinese American student at a very classically white, classically British university. And I felt like an outsider on many levels. Also, there's a colonial history there that I was acutely aware of, that I think other dark academia novels don't always engage with. Books like Babel pave the way for readers to still enjoy the dark academia aesthetic, but not have to be so focused on a Eurocentric cast of characters and plot. For this reason, I'm really excited about the future of dark academia as a book genre. It's full of potential. But you tell me, what do you love or dislike about the dark academia book genre? Leave me a comment because I would love to know. And if you really enjoyed this bookish deep dive, check out this one below for another video that I think you will really love. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time.